Okay, welcome to the live stream for January 3rd, 2017. I am your host, Dana Morningstar. And let's see if I've got it up and going correctly. Welcome, George is here. Welcome. How was your New Year? How was everybody's New Year? Little Miss says it sounds great. Good deal. Yeah, we tested the sound ahead of time. So hopefully there's no creepy breathing or anything. Shella, Angelique, Jennifer, Roberta, Rock, Torstein, Virginia, Green Eyes, AJ. Torstein says new hair color, looking good. Yeah, I decided to go back to dark. This is darker than I was going for, but here we are. So Deanna says sober. Good deal. Holidays are such a hard time for so many people. And yeah, Christmas and New Year's both. I think probably perhaps the hardest time of the year. Did you guys make any resolutions or I don't know, like everybody spends New Year's differently, you know? Like for me personally, I am not a real big party person. I like to kind of be alone and journal and reflect and I don't know, just kind of get my head straight for the coming year. And that's probably one of my favorite things to do on New Year's Eve. I know that sounds kind of lame, but I really like it. I'm not a fan of going to parties. Ooh, that's a good one, Lucy. Lucy says her New Year's resolution is to stop doing JADE. And JADE is an acronym for justify, argue, defend, and explain. These are 4 things that a lot of us tend to slip into when we are setting boundaries. And the whole JADE thing are things that you don't need to do, but that we often find ourselves doing because setting boundaries, saying no, even just asserting ourselves, it takes practice and it can be very difficult. And so that's a good reminder that we don't need to justify, argue, defend, or explain why we don't want to do something or why we have a certain opinion or stance on something. Yes, that's a good one. Christina says, mine is to say what I feel and to stop absorbing other people's emotions. That's a big one. That is a big one, especially guilt. I think that's one of those emotions that we oftentimes tend to take on. And, you know, it's difficult. Like when you have a narcissist in your life or an emotional manipulator of any kind, they do such a good job at trying to get other people to take responsibility for them. You know, like, I need you and only you understand. And you know, you can't leave me now. And all of this kind of stuff, when it can really put a person in a position feeling like they do need me and I can't, there's a sense of obligation. Like I feel like I can't leave them no matter how awful they've been to me, that I have to be here to somehow help them. And you know, the truth is that everybody's accountable for themselves, that they're an adult and that they need to find their own way, and to not let them put their guilt onto us. And again, that takes practice too, having kind of getting rid of those like blurred boundaries where we're feeling responsible for other people. And speaking of which, the book club book that thankfully I started a few days ago because it is really chock full of stuff. It's Codependency for Dummies is the book that we're reading, and it's a fantastic book that really addresses a lot of, like, even if you don't identify as being codependent, there's a lot of topics in there about blurred boundaries and feeling responsible for other people, and you know, just kind of saying no and people pleasing and being a doormat and all of that. It's a great book. The other book I would recommend if you guys are looking for information about boundaries is the book club book that we read. What was it? 2 book clubs ago? I have no sense of time. It was a book. It was called Boundaries. Boundaries After a Pathological Relationship by, I loved her name, Adeline Birch, I believe her name was. And it's a quick read. I just thought she just nailed it. It's She just really spells stuff out in there, like what are blurred boundaries, what are weak boundaries, what are some signs that your boundaries need work. And it was, to me, it was very clarifying. Oh my God, the cat's in here. I didn't even see him. Okay. That's, of course, now he wants to play. So we'll see. Okay, let's see. Christina says, I so need that book. Yeah, and then Rebecca says, I feel this way. My husband has been diagnosed with emphysema, and the pressure is really on for me to care for him. Kitty cat, no, no, no. No, no. Hold on just a second. Kitty cat. Good. Go. Playing with my water bottles. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's difficult when you have an emotional manipulator in your life who, especially if they are sick or if they're elderly or, hold on, kitty, no. God, how many of these things are in here? If there is, if a person is abusive and they're sick, it can be that added challenge of, I feel like they really do need me. So how do I distance myself and yet still kind of be there for them? And that is a journey that everybody, that's such an individual thing and something that you'll have to kind of navigate and figure out as far as like, what boundaries can you have? And frankly, even if they are not abusive, this is something that I think a lot of us that are kind of natural caregivers really struggle with, is putting other people's needs ahead of our own, to the point where we just give and give and give and give and give until we have nothing left to give. And so having these boundaries in place, even if the person isn't abusive, is very critical. Because it, you know, if we care about somebody, if you want to be there, it's great. But if it's sinking you to try to save them, then there needs to be a better balance found. The Tameline says, I'm confused. Is book club tonight? No, it's not. Book club is always the last Thursday of every month. So for book club for this month, it's going to be Codependency for Dummies. And I will put, I don't think I didn't update the link, but I will put the link down below in the description. You can find it on Amazon, probably at the library. But it's like seriously heavy reading. Like I'm only maybe 15% of the way through the book, and I already have like 15 pages of notes. So it's going to be, I'm probably going to end up with, I would guess, like a solid 60 pages of notes from the book. And then I'll go through and then pick out like my top 11 things. But it's one of those books that I think a person could read multiple times, and because there's so much in it that you could take out totally new information every single time you read it, because it's just that thick. It's that full of information. CB says, yeah, setting boundaries will help with work and family issues too. I need a workbook for this topic. Tier. Yes. And the thing too with boundaries is, once you are aware of them, it's sort of like this light switch flips on, and it's cool. I mean, it can be very overwhelming at first, and it can feel like an uphill climb, and it just takes practice. But the more you tune in to how are you feeling, because the best way to tell if there's a boundary violation is to pay attention to how you feel. If you're feeling, kind of the early signs of a boundary violation are confusion, irritation, resentment, frustration, feeling victimized, feeling taken advantage of. I would say like resentment is probably second after confusion. And then kind of late stages of that tend to be a lot of anger, rage, outbursts, different types of like unhealthy coping, drinking, eating, shopping, spending money of any kind, gambling, cheating, uh, all kinds of like maladaptive ways of coping. Because, and it's like when a person's in a situation and they feel powerless to leave for whatever reason, if it's against their religion, if they think, you know what, marriage is forever, or I've got to take care of this other person forever, and they don't feel like they can have boundaries, then in their mind, if their only option is to stay, and if they're trying to convince themselves that they need to stay in an impossible situation, then they're going to have to figure out ways of coping. And all of this stuff starts taking a toll on a person. And to the point where, like later stages, there's a lot of physical symptoms that come up. You've got headaches, you're not sleeping, you're sleeping too much, maybe you're breaking out, uh, different inflammatory disorders are occurring. You're losing your hair. You're pulling at your hair, eating disorders, just all kinds of things. It's amazing what how our body processes our emotions. And interestingly enough, too, is if we're not comfortable with dealing with our emotions in a certain way, like if we're not comfortable dealing with them head on and just being assertive and saying, hey, this doesn't work for me, we need to figure out something different or what have you, those emotions will, they need to come out. And so they're going to find an outlet. And here's where it gets interesting is they will oftentimes find an outlet that subconsciously we feel is more acceptable to us. So, for example, a lot of people might say, they might actually develop a headache, or they might actually develop, um, they might make them like literally make themselves sick, but not realize that they're subconsciously doing this. So if there's a big, and you see kids do this all the time, right? Like if they have a big, I don't know, like a classroom presentation, or they have to give a speech, or they, something's coming up that they're not comfortable with, they might be like, I don't feel good, my stomach hurts, I have a headache. And this all might be legitimate, but it might be because they're not comfortable with this event. So it's manifesting, that discomfort's manifesting in a way that's more, in their mind, more acceptable. It's just very interesting how the human body works. So getting a solid understanding of your boundaries when they've been violated, how to get them back on track is huge. And seriously, like that takes a lot of practice, and it can be very discouraging if you're like, man, I can't believe, because here's the thing too, it's like hindsight's always 2020. So odds are you're going to have like a problematic situation. Maybe you have a coworker who's being inappropriate with you, for example, and you don't know how to handle it, or you feel like you shouldn't have to handle it, right? Like that they should just know, hey, like quit creeping on me, we're at work. And so all of this resentment and anger is brewing and brewing, and it gets to the point where things get really bad. Maybe you quit, maybe you just freak out and rage on them one day, or things get really bad till you have to go to HR. It depends how long a person, these kind of situations continue. But if you can practice speaking up for yourself sooner than later, and just stopping it and being like, hey, you know what, like I'm not interested, or that's not cool, or I don't date people that I work with, or there's any number of ways that you can say no. And it's going to just be dependent upon kind of what's most comfortable with you. Being assertive takes practice, and you will get better at it over time. I think most people, when they first start finally trying to speak up from themselves, it can be so uncomfortable that they might start off lying and saying something like, let's use that example again. If a coworker is being inappropriate with you and asking you out and you're not interested, at first, a person might give in. They might give their coworker their number, like begrudgingly give their coworker their number. They might kind of get talked into going out on like a group get together with this person or what have you. Um, and then they might start saying things like, "Oh, you know what? I'm sick," or "I just, I've got plans," or they might start making up excuses. But then over time, the more you get comfortable just asserting yourself, the less of a big deal it becomes. And then the less you start being responsible too, or taking on that responsibility of another person's emotions, where you can just more quickly just say, "Hey, I'm not interested," or, you know, "No, that's not cool," or what have you. So, but boundaries are a big thing. Uh, People are talking about twin flames and soulmates. Medi says twin flames are a fake concept to disguise narcissism. Yeah, I agree. I am not a fan of the concept of twin flames or soulmates. I think anything that there's many reasons for this, but that in itself is a very idealized concept. It's a very kind of this idea, this romantic love, that there's this one other person out there that's kind of meant to complete us. It's it's also, I think, very much a form of kind of a cloaked codependency. It's this idea that somebody else out there completes us. And it's not a concept that I subscribe to. I think everybody that kind of comes into our life brings something, right? They either bring joy or they bring a really hard earned life lesson. So, I don't think that there is one other perfect person for us. And I think a lot of people that kind of look for that other perfect person tend to become very like bitter and jaded when they're not finding this person, or when that person starts showing their humanity, because everybody looks good at first, right? I mean, everybody that you're attracted to, either intellectually or physically or both, at first it's like, man, I really click with this person, they're so fantastic. But it takes time to really know a person, and when you do, then you realize that they're human, that they have quirks about them that you don't like, that they maybe have some certain beliefs that you don't agree with, and what have you. So it's not so much about another person completing us or us completing another person. It's about finding people that have more of that growth mentality, that have that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. They are ready, willing, and able to be a team player, and they treat you with dignity and respect. I mean, those are the kinds of people that I feel like more are along the lines of like, your people or our people or what have you. Like, seek out those people that make you feel safe and secure, and um, that you can be yourself around. So, Leslie says, I see so many troubled relationships all around me. Yes. What really bugs me is seeing abusive relationships, especially in books and media and music, that are glorified as romantic. Like, that sends me up the wall, like, just rage. Rage. It makes me so angry because it's so obviously problematic. And then I get really discouraged because I'm like, man, if people don't see this as a problem, then there's so much work that needs to be done. It's just, oh God, it makes me so angry. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Missouri Cowboy brings up a great point. He says, yes, ick. waiting on your white knight to come riding up, the soulmate, the twin flame. He, he. Yes. And that's another kind of part of it. That's the other type of dynamic that tends to be going around is, this, that women are damsels in distress and need a white knight to kind of save them. And I think a lot of women buy into this and a lot of men buy into this. And that is also very toxic. People really need to be able to kind of hold their own and have their own stuff figured out before they get into a relationship. And if a person's looking to be rescued or needing to be rescued from their own life, that's a problem. And of course, like, we might have at one time thought, "Oh, but that's so romantic and all that," but it's not. It's a big problem, and, nobody else can fix another person, so it's kinda the whole thing, like, are you looking for a partner, or are you looking for a project? Look for a partner. Okay, let me see here. Mel says, "What do you think of the hashtag #MeToo movement that is counteracting that culture?" I have mixed feelings on the Me Too movement. On one hand, I feel like it's fantastic that people are really coming forward and saying, "Hey, you know what? This happened to me and this was outrageous and I was embarrassed or I was ashamed," and that this stuff is taken seriously and that especially in Hollywood, like that these predators and these perverts are that the action is being taken, that they are losing their jobs, that things are happening. Like that gives me some sort of degree of hope. Where it concerns me is how manipulative people can be. And I don't know, what concerns me is it can be a very quick way to destroy somebody's life by accusing them of something, and uh, people being very quick, kind of this knee jerk reaction to take drastic action when there's not really an investigation done. We haven't seen a whole lot of that, although I think there was one instance not too long ago where that happened, and I forget, I'll have to look it up. I forget who it was, but it was a gal who was paid by some sort of group to claim sexual harassment, and the whole situation never even happened. But that kind of stuff is not cool. So I don't know, that's just kind of my concern. I think it's one of those things when survivors come forward and they say, "Hey, this happened to me," it needs to be taken seriously to the point where it's properly investigated. Other than that, if people are taking, like, dramatic action without that investigation, then that's where you kind of get this whole witch hunt thing happening. And it's scary. So, oh, and I agree. Rebecca says, as a survivor of rape, I am offended by some people jumping on board the movement to get attention. Yes. Yeah. I agree. I don't know. And then too, from like a group perspective, I don't like, kind of doing what I do, I always get concerned of the ripple effect to all of this. Because when a person does come forward and say, "Hey, this happened to me," kind of the unintended consequence of that is, and I'm not saying this to like deter anybody from coming forward, but the unintended consequence can be that can really be like chumming the waters of predators. And you've probably seen kind of this what would you call, like, upsurgence of um kind of quote unquote, false feminists, a bunch of like predatory men coming forward to be there, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry this happened to you," and blah, blah, blah. And they're just, kind of sliding under the radar in order to kind of prey on these really vulnerable women. So, yeah. And let's see. Kind of off topic, but maybe not really, is the kind of degree of predatory behavior in Hollywood. I somehow came across, I don't know, I fell down a hole in YouTube the other day, and there was, a lot of talk about Shirley Temple, and it's so crazy because when you see this stuff, like, you can't unsee it, you have this kind of new perspective of what is problematic behavior and what's really going on there, because if we would have seen it before, it can really come across as innocent because we're just not seeing it through the lens of the kind of that dark side, but I was watching some video about Shirley Temple, and then they also had one about Brooke Shields and how sexualized, how young they were. And there was some movie with Shirley Temple that she was, and of course she was absolutely darling, 3 or 4 years old. And the whole concept of the movie was like her seducing these men, like 30-year-old men. And you see it through that lens of like, this is child exploitation, and it's just really disturbing. And then, of course, same thing with Brooke Shields. She was in a lot of movies. She was actually, I think she was in Playboy at the age of 12, fully nude. And her mother was the one that like was promoting her to do that. So it's amazing and saddening at the same time, but amazing and how far we've come as a culture where we're like, okay, that's just not okay. That we still have an awful long way to go. Ooh, that's a really interesting point, Missouri Cowboy. He says, Dana, can you discuss self care versus changing one's body as we age to accommodate body shame? I don't, that's a big conversation. Are we talking self care in terms of like Botox and plastic surgery and that kind of stuff? Uh, I don't quite know really how I feel about stuff like that. I think on one hand, a person, I think it's a slippery slope. I think on one hand, if a person is needing or wanting a certain procedure and they have a lot of self-confidence issues about a certain thing, I mean, and really, I'm all for whatever another person wants to do with their body because it's their body. My concern would be is if it's if it's a deeper insecurity that's driving that, then oftentimes surgery is not the answer. They might think it is, but then, kind of like any celebrity that's had a ton of plastic surgery, they think, okay, if I just get a nose job, then I'll be happy. If I just get a facelift, then I'll be happy. If I just, dye my hair, then I'll be happy. And it's just kind of this trail, this bunny trail that doesn't tend to end well. It's hard. It's difficult to okay, Missouri Cowboy says, "Yes, cosmetic surgery." It's difficult to embrace aging. And unfortunately, we live in a culture that's very kinda anti-aging, that if a person hits a certain age, then you've just hit a wall and you're kind of irrelevant. And and especially people I think that are dating and they're older, um, it's just I don't know, we're at a very interesting place with society and culture when it comes to aging and all of that. For me personally, I what I find attractive about another person is if they're comfortable in their skin. I have a friend of mine, she's about my mother's age, so she's in her early 70s, and I mean, just even thinking about her, like, I just adore her. I She just is the most amazing woman. She was never big into makeup, has silver hair, I just love her. She's just cool and she's just good people. And, never was into Botox or any of that. And she's just always kind of been like this hippie chick. And I love being around her because she's so comfortable being who she is. And I think a lot of people tend to feel that way around other people. It's kind of very off putting when a person is so, they've had so many different procedures that you can tell that they're not even themselves anymore, you know? But yeah, getting comfortable with aging is a process. It's something that, I turned 40 this year. And so it's something that I think about a lot. My brother is a personal trainer and he's also a fitness model. And so he's just in amazing shape. He always has been ever since he was like seriously like 8 years old. He's been working out ever since he was a kid. He just loves it. And we were talking the other day about exercise and working out and stuff. And he still does competitions and all that. And he was saying, he's like, he's like, I realized, if like I need to be in amazing condition because kind of if not now, then when? And that was a big aha moment for me because I've noticed things I just don't have the flexibility in my body that used to be there. And it's not like, dramatic, but it's there. And, I got Botox a few times when I was well, I was gonna say when I was younger, but it wasn't even that long ago. I got Botox a few years ago, and I really wasn't wild about how it made me look, so I've quit getting it. I don't know if I would get it again. Um, it's so hard to say. I don't know about, like, absolutes with stuff like that. And 2, it's so hard. I mean, there's some celebrities that I see that I think have had work done that do look amazing. Like, I think Sharon Osbourne looks amazing. I think, what is her name? Kris Kardashian looks amazing. Like, they both have had obviously, quite a bit of work done, but it looks really good. It's a gamble though, right? Like, you can get work done and then it does not end well at all. I don't know. I guess when it boils down to it, I like people that have laugh lines and that have wrinkles and that their face tells a story. And like my friend that I was talking about, she's just got this like beautiful silver hair and she's just very much herself. And that's I, a big part of my appeal, her appeal, my attraction towards her as a person. Yeah. CB says, Madonna doesn't look that amazing, but I like people who are comfortable in their skin too. Yeah, and I feel bad for celebrities because there's all this pressure for them to perpetually look like they're 32. And, Madonna, I forget how old she is. I think she's in her 60s now. And, she's like still in like amazing shape. She's such a powerhouse. And um, that'll be hard. I think that would be especially hard for her because she was such a sex object for so long. And I think it would be really difficult, kind of transitioning out of that. And, like where I would imagine that there's kind of an identity crisis, like what do you transition to? I don't know. That would be kind of a hard thing to age out of. Narc Free says, I thought Joan Rivers looked good for her age. Yeah. And she had quite a few facelifts. But yeah, she did. I mean, her work looked pretty good. My friend and I, we used to joke whenever we would go get like a facial or like microdermabrasion and stuff. And we would say, like, I want to have skin like Joan Rivers. Just grind off like the top 3 layers and do what you need to do in order to make it look smooth. We were joking, of course, but not really. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's more about what's in, I mean, I know it's so cliche, right? But it really is more about like what's on the inside of a person. Like there are so many people out there that might have a ton of work done. I don't know. There gets to a point where like a person's had so much work done that they don't even look human. They look like a caricature of themselves, and that's not attractive. And having a good sense of humor, being a solid, decent person, uh, embracing kind of who you are. And I was telling Travis earlier tonight because I dyed my hair and and I said, yeah, I'm thinking about like putting some streaks in it just because it's so dark. And he was joking and he's like, oh, you're gonna put like white, like white streaks in it. And I was like, no, but once I really start going gray, probably in another 7 to 10 years, is that a part of me really just wants to go like cloud white. There was a gal I used to work with. Well, she worked in my building. I didn't know her name. I ran into her one day in the women's bathroom, and she had like just white silver hair, and she wasn't that old. And we were both at the sink. We were washing our hands, and I made a comment about her hair that it was so beautiful because it really was. And I told her how I was having all this anxiety because when you have dark hair and you start getting gray hairs, they're very noticeable. It's like having tinsel in your hair. And I said, it's really freaking me out. I didn't expect to get like silver hair until much older. And because my dad didn't go start really going gray. He's in his mid 70s. I don't remember him going gray until he was in his like late 60s. Maybe it was earlier than that, but he probably had salt and pepper hair for a while, but in my mind it was always dark hair. But anyhow, she had said that she has decided to go ahead and embrace it, and she dyed all of her hair. She started dyeing her hair intentionally like silver, like the silver white color around my age, like in her 40s. And she's like, it's great because she's like, now I'm just perpetually young because I will have this hair color forever. And I'm not trying to, cover up roots and do all this stuff. So I kind of like that. Christina says, yeah, embrace those wrinkles. Yeah. And that's a weird thing. That's another weird thing about Botox. I totally forgot until you just mentioned it is, depending on where you get Botox, it obviously smooths out wrinkles. It changes the way that people perceive what you say. Because if you have an expressive face, which most of us tend to, we tend to smile, like we smile with our eyes. Like your smile normally kind of travels up to your eyes. And when that's gone, it's weird because you can't really read if it's a sincere smile or if it's an insincere smile or like what's going on with that person. It's just very strange. Let's see. Long, long asked Dana, have you ever discussed satanic ritual abuse? And do you believe those involved are narcissists? Yes. I haven't really specifically ever addressed satanic ritual abuse, but I think anytime you have a person at the helm of any type of abuse, especially extreme abuse like that, whether it's a cult, an extreme dictator, a satanic group, you're dealing with a personality disordered person. So they're either, generally speaking, there's a heavy degree of narcissism there. Whether or not that person would technically qualify for like narcissistic personality disorder is another topic completely. And as far as I'm concerned, it's totally irrelevant. Like it's the behavior. So you've got that level for cult leaders, whether they're satanic ritual abuse type people or religious, well, I guess religious cults in general, right? Satanic or Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or what have you. Uh, those kinds of personalities tend to be, they're very charismatic, they're very intense, and they tend to be on that very grandiose side of things, or they've got a lot of very then they tend to be also delusional, like very strange beliefs, uh, about things, and, and then, of course, then things really I think the more, kind of followers that they tend to get, then it just fuels this unhealthy ego that they have, and then things really start going to, like, a crazy place where you start getting, child brides and ritualistic abuse, and, people selling all of their earthly possessions, or other people taking on that same very strange cult worldview, whatever that might be, thinking that they're aliens from another planet, or that they're going to go to another planet, or that they're somehow the chosen people, or what have you. Belief systems in general are very, very interesting. And I think really the most important part of all of that is to realize that nobody thinks that that would happen to them. Nobody ever thinks that they would get involved with a cult, or with an abusive partner of any kind, or that they would follow an abusive dictator like Hitler, or get involved in something like that. And it's so important for us to realize that this stuff can happen to anybody, and for us to be very aware of what our vulnerabilities are, and having an idea of what deal breaker behavior is, because that stuff is so insidious and it happens. It's a slippery slope. I think that's the other thing that people think of when they think of cults, is they think that it's same with abusive relationships. They think it's so extreme. Like, I can't, like, it's like ludicrous, right? Like, I cannot believe this person got involved with this cult. They thought they were all, aliens, and that, that they were going to go to this other planet. And on the surface, people think, "Oh, I would never agree with that. These people are all nuts." But what they don't see is those belief systems happen little by little, and like when you get a bunch of people that all commit suicide, it's oftentimes they don't even consider that committing suicide. They consider that they're moving on to like a different dimension, or that it's somehow like a positive thing, or like an appropriate solution, or what have you. So, um, you know, I guess for us to just be aware of, like, when is something a problem for you? So we don't get caught, so this doesn't happen to us, so we don't get caught up in this kind of stuff. And Missouri Cowboy is saying, I think most of the quote unquote church leaders here in the Bible Belt are narcissists or cult leaders. Most of them, not all. I think when you have any person, I think there's a high degree of grandiosity for a person to think that they're a spiritual leader, frankly. I think that right there is going to attract a lot of really problematic people. And so I think, I don't know, there's a lot of, I have a lot of issues with organized religion in general, but it's so easy to be corrupted because, you've got, it's the same dynamics of a cult, right? You have a lot of very vulnerable people that are willing to give money towards some sort of ultimate goal. You have the fear of hell, or um, damnation, or what have you. So yeah, I don't know. Religion itself can be kind of a fine line to walk, and it can be difficult, I think, for a person to tell, am I actually in a group of am I around a bunch of people that are also believers that are, you know, uniting under a belief and that we're doing better in the world, or am I actually involved in a cult? So, do I have free will? And would I be accepted to be myself in this group? And, a lot of times that's the answer is no. Oh, yeah, CB was saying the David Koresh documentary comes on this week. It's the 25th anniversary of the Waco siege. I cannot believe it's been 25 years. Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, that would be an interesting documentary to watch. Kevin is saying, I kind of think I think most atheists are narcissists as well. That's a very valid point. I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of narcissists and sociopaths out there, and many different religions and many different professions and many different walks of life. And I think at the end of the day, what's most important is for us to get clear about our boundaries and what we're looking for in our life and what's a problem for us, and to have an idea of like what are our what's workable behavior, what's a deal breaker, what's you know like kind of where our intuition is in things, paying attention to our emotions, uh, getting grounded within ourselves. And that's a big first step, is just really getting grounded within ourself. Because the more grounded you are within yourself, the less likely you're going to be knocked off balance and get involved in problematic stuff like that. Whatever it might be, whatever way that it might take. It's My Life says abuse feels like a cult. You have to be secluded to be abused without you being oblivious to it. Oh, with you being oblivious to it. Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I've said this multiple times that, as far as abuse goes, there is a lot in an abusive relationship, there is a lot more in common with a cult dynamic than there is with a relationship. Because when a person's in a relationship with an abusive person, you basically are in this mini cult run by the narcissist. They call all of the shots. They're using, abusing, and exploiting or neglecting the other people in their quote unquote cult, which is their family. And everybody walks on eggshells. No one's allowed to be individuals. If you are, there's you step outside of the box, you're very quickly put back in the box. It's silent treatment. It's, screaming, it's yelling, it's threats, it's all different kinds of things. And so it's be very much like a cult. And having a person get out of that type of relationship is a lot like deprogramming a person from a cult and trying to get them to think, to question everything and to think critically. So that's one of the trickiest things when a person is going about leaving, is especially, when a person is very emotionally invested in staying in a situation, whatever it is, a cult, a relationship, a job, they're going to continue justifying things because at some level, whatever situation they're in is meeting their needs. And human beings were wired for consistency, and we're wired to get our needs met. And if our needs are being met in a certain way, no matter how toxic that might be, it's like our brain is wanting us to stay there and to not risk not getting our needs met. So human beings, like, we're not really wired for change. So change anyhow is scary, let alone being in an abusive relationship where there's a ton of manipulation, there's a ton of, cognitive dissonance, there's a ton of confusion, there's a ton of like ground down self-esteem. There's all these, financial reasons and children and religion and culture and family and people who don't understand. There's all these other reasons that come into play that can hold a person in there. Um, but having a person kind of get out of that situation it can be very difficult. And one of the things that I have found to be most effective is, I think, for starters, is getting the person to own the decision that they're going to leave. instead of, and this happens a lot in support groups, and I'm totally guilty of it as well, but people will say, "Hey, is this problematic? And like, what should I do?" And, saying, "Oh, you need to get out of there. This is not good, blah, blah, blah." But the problem is if that person hasn't fully owned that decision, like if they're not ready to leave, then what happens is if they do leave and nostalgia starts kicking back in, or their ex gets a new partner, or any number of things happens, they start second guessing themselves, then they're going to blame you for them leaving. And so it's a big part of a person regaining their own power and control is kind of that can happen starting now, and to start owning their decisions that they're making. So if a person wants to leave or is toying with the idea of leaving, kind of asking questions of, you know, um, kind of where is your deal breaker? What are your deal breakers with all of this? Getting not, and you don't have to share them with anybody, but like getting clear so once these certain lines have been crossed that you are going to leave. And or asking them if you're if you had a sibling, if you had somebody that you loved that was in this exact same situation, what advice would you give to them? And that can be very eye-opening because oftentimes people can see it. We have trouble seeing situations that we have trouble seeing situations clearly for what they are when we are in them because we have that increased emotional investment in them. It's a lot easier for a person to see a problem when they're not in that situation. So it can be a lot easier for somebody to say, "Oh, yes, I would tell my younger brother or sister, yeah, get out of there. That person's cheating on you. They're using you, blah, blah, blah." And it's so much harder for us to kind of take our own advice, but it can at least be that wake up call of, okay, there's something wrong here. Like if you were giving different, if you were telling somebody else that you loved, hey, get the heck out of there. But if you're not telling that to yourself, then why? Why would you encourage somebody else that you love to get out of there, but you're thinking that you need to stay? Uh, yes. Agatha says, it's like going to rehab for someone else. It's a waste of time. Addicts need to decide to get clean. Victims need to decide enough is enough and leave. Yes. Yes, I agree. And when when a person is caught up in addiction, there's a high degree of narcissism that goes along with that, and that's the addiction. It's all about them. It's all about getting that next drink or that next fix or what have you, and it's at the expense of everybody else, including themselves. It's all about that addiction. And it's one of the hardest things I think for people who love an addict to realize, like, we can't save them, and the only way that they even have a chance of sobering up is if they hit rock bottom. And it's really difficult to watch a person that you care about suffer like that. But unfortunately, that's generally what it takes because we can get them dragged away and into rehab and all of these things. But unless they're actually ready to work a program, then the program's not going to work. Yashira says, "Dear Dana, my ex has a new supply and I'm worried for her since he tried killing me more than twice. Should I try communicating with her?" Oh boy. Yeah, that's a difficult one. Here's the thing with that is she's probably not going to believe you. He's probably already planted the seed that you're the problem, that you're the crazy, angry, bitter, mentally ill ex, right? And so kind of no matter what you say, she's probably not going to hear it. And if you did try to warn her, if he's already tried killing you twice, that could really, and let's just say she, you open up communication, she listens to everything you say and she takes you seriously and she's like, "Oh, thank you so much for warning me." And then she leaves the next day. Odds are she's probably going to tell him, "Hey, you know what? Your ex contacted me. I got to go. Like, you're an abusive jerk." And then there's a very solid chance that he's going to then come after you for a third time. So I would never recommend anybody opening conversation with the new supply, especially if it's going to put you in potential danger. So, and the thing is too, when a person, because if there's that emotional investment there, and if a person's in a relationship and they want it to work out, and and she right now is probably in that idealized stage, right, where she's like, I've met this amazing guy, he's so perfect, blah blah blah." If she comes across information like that, he tried to kill me twice, he's got domestic violence charges against him, blah, blah, blah. She's going to do what most people would do, and that's going to be to try to smooth over that cognitive dissonance that she's feeling. And in order to do that, what people tend to do is then they go to the abusive person for answers. "Hey, I talked to your ex and she was saying that you have domestic violence charges against you." And this is where we all tend to go wrong, right? Like we're turning towards a pathological liar to tell us the truth. And they don't do that, right? Like kind of by definition, a pathological liar is a person that lies all the time. So they're not going to all of a sudden start telling the truth, especially when it's going to have negative consequences for them. But this is what most people do. "Hey, I heard this from your ex. This was a problem. What do you have to say about it?" And then of course he's going to say something like, "Oh, she was nuts. She totally filed false charges against me, blah, blah." And then what happens is now he's turned her against you and now she's a flying monkey and now they're both coming after you. So, um, yeah. Heather says, yeah, they just have to learn their own lesson, just like we did in the relationship. And hopefully it'll make her stronger. Yeah. It's really difficult. If you're far away and that you would not actually be in harm's way, if anybody were to ever want to contact the new supply and this would not put you in danger in any way, shape, or form, what I would recommend doing, because they're going to think that you're the bitter, angry, jealous, possessive ex who can't let go. I would, if your dynamic ran a set course, right? Like they were pathologically cheating on you, or they had stolen money or what have you, or I would speak to the behavior. And if I were to contact the new supply, I would just say, "Hey, you know what? Um, I just want you to know, like if you start experiencing like these outbursts of rage or silent treatment or being accused of things that you're not doing, like being accused that you're manipulative or that you're a narcissist or that you're abusive, that I just want you to know that I experienced that too." And I would just strongly encourage you to Google narcissistic abuse or whatever you experienced. If they start coming up with excuses about having to work a lot or work late or um, all of their female friends or what have you, I would bring up that directly and just say, like, "You're probably not going to believe me. I wouldn't have believed me either. And I'm not even asking that you believe me, just human being to human being. I'm trying to give you a heads up. So if you encounter this, Google projection or gaslighting or narcissistic abuse, and then just leave the ball in their court." But I wouldn't get into the nitty gritty of like all the details of stuff that you necessarily experienced, because then it can look like, you are the bitter ex or what have you. So, and they're probably not going to believe, like, I think the more information we give, the less they're going to be inclined to believe us. Um, okay. New Chris says, "Dana, what if you have no deal breakers?" Well, if you don't have deal breakers, then your life is probably going to be very tumultuous, and it's time to create some deal breakers. Odds are you probably do have deal breakers, you're just not aware of them. Most people do. So, whether that might be your deal breakers are, I don't know, being cheated on, being hit, being stolen from, being, you know, yelled at, called names, those kinds of things. If those if you've gone through all of that and you're like, "You know what? I've been with this person for a long time and I feel like all of my I don't maybe I never even had boundaries, but whatever boundaries I did have all been eroded and I don't have any deal breakers and I feel like I don't have any boundaries and I don't know where to start." Where you can start with that is by taking some time and writing the stuff down. What do you want your deal breakers to be? And kind of going from there. And, I've shared this before, but I think it's kind of worth repeating. For me, for a very long time, my deal breakers were abuse, addiction, adultery, or like a bad attitude. Somebody that was constantly negative, trying to drag me down, always telling me I couldn't do stuff, kind of undermining, critical, condescending, just a big drag, a big crazy making drag. So any of that stuff before was deal breaker stuff. I have since tightened up my boundaries and my deal breakers to the point where I don't do perpetual confusion and I don't do crazy making in relationships. So those are the kind of the two added ones. And I don't do anybody that treats me with like disdain, contempt, or hostility. So, and I wish I would have embraced that sooner. But the old me really thought, you know what, I need to stick around until basically I'm proven right. It didn't feel legitimate to leave based off of being uncomfortable. I felt like I was being too judgmental, or I was concerned, like, well, what if I'm missing out on a really great person? Like, what if it's me? What if it's, no. I'm it's to the point where if the relationship is bad for your mental health, then it's not worth being in. Like, it doesn't have to be, full out level 10 sociopathic crazy in order for you to leave. Like, if it's causing you mental anguish and if it's uncomfortable and you don't feel safe around that person, like emotionally or physically, then that's not a relationship to be in. Lila says, "Yes, Dana, I needed serious problems to realize it was a problem." Oh, CB asked, "Did anyone else catch her complete list?" I'll see if I can repeat it. I think the big ones, like the extreme stuff, abuse of any kind, addiction, adultery, or cheating if you're not married, abuse, addiction, adultery, bad attitude. That's the major stuff. The earlier stages of that kind of stuff would be anybody that's treating you with disdain, contempt, hostility, or a situation that's perpetually confusing, crazy making, I would say condescending, controlling, critical. Anything that does not feel nourishing. I would say just go. Get out of there. You've probably heard me talk before about that whole kind of emotional scale concept of going for the nines and tens. So figuring out your own emotional scale. This is maybe an easier way to do this, or maybe another way to kind of look at the same concept. So if you think about your emotional scale of 0 being ice cold, 5 being lukewarm, 10 being like, that's the zone, that's like absolute amazingness for me. Aim for those people, places, things, experiences, jobs, you name it, that are in that 9, 10 zone. And of course, your emotional scale is gonna fluctuate as you grow and change, but the more you can stay at really like a 7 or above, the more your life is gonna work out for you. And so what so many of us end up doing is we tend to either get in relationships or friendships or take jobs that are like a 5. Or maybe they start off as a 10, but then very quickly they turn into like a 5 or a 3, but we're not aware of it because we have feelings involved. So, really getting clear on like how certain things feel and if these things really are indeed nourishing for you. So, you probably experience this too. A lot of people will be like, well, this relationship is abusive, but I really love him or I love her. And what's going on there is there's these chemical connections that have been made. There's that dopamine, there's that oxytocin, those connections that are made, but the relationship itself is not nourishing. And so that's why there's such this confusing parallel between, you know, this is so abusive, but I feel like I can't leave. And so it's important for us to really get clear on at any given time, like, is this a healthy environment for me to be in? And what does healthy look like for you? Because everybody's, idea of healthy is going to be different. If let's say you're a musician or an artist and um, you really were like, I need to express myself, I need to create, and you're with a person who can't stand who loves quiet and they can't be around noise. If you need to practice, like do you see what I'm saying? Like it might be very difficult. You might have to start stifling kind of who you are to be in a relationship with that person, so it might not be that might not be a good match. Or you have 5 kids and they don't like children. Like doesn't really matter how you feel about them, like that's not going to work, you know? Um so yes, Maria says, yes, learning to walk away very, very quickly from what doesn't feel totally right is such a key skill to peacefulness and believing happiness is possible. The quicker I walk, the better. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be such a difficult thing to do because it can feel like, well, what if, I don't know, there can be all of this self-doubt there. There can be all of these feelings of you know, maybe things can be worked on or what have you, but yeah, I've never been in a situation where I've thought to myself like a bad situation where something's been off and I've never looked back and thought, "Boy, I wish I would have stayed there longer." Never, not once, you Most situations tend to just become more of what they already are. Just like most people over time tend to become more of what they already are. They don't tend to like radically change. Lauren says, anytime I see somebody showing slightly problematic behavior, I'm ready to run and break contact. Is this normal after being in an abusive situation? Yes. And depending on kind of the stuff what you're talking about, it's not even necessarily a bad thing. I think more often than not, it's actually a healthy thing. It's now your eyes are open to realizing that not everybody out there is like you and that your love can't change them. And so we can can make us feel very hyper vigilant where we're like, oh man, I'm seeing this problematic behavior and I just want to run. But is this me avoiding love? Is this me, um, is it an issue I have with trust or commitment or what have you? Or is what I'm seeing actually a problem? And it takes a while for a person to really kind of try to navigate that new sense of normal with all of this. But and here's my take on it is it's less about trying to figure them out. It's more about trying to figure out what works for you. That takes so much of the load off. I can't even begin to like stress that. when we can shift from trying to figure out, is this indeed problematic, and then how problematic, and are they a narcissist, and are they a sociopath, and is, like all of this stuff, if you can just figure out, okay, well, what, like I was saying earlier, for me, I don't do perpetual confusion. So and I don't do abuse. So if somebody's going to be doing, and I don't do emotional immaturity in general. So if a person can't just be straight up with me, if they're going to do silent treatment, if they're going to rage, if they're going to shut down, if they're going to, you know, like just not have that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, then I'm not interested. I don't care. I don't care how they grew up. I don't care about their ex. Like, I don't care. I don't care. Like, they need to go figure their stuff out. It either works for me or it doesn't. And that might sound really selfish, but it's not. It's self-care. It's about knowing kind of what works for you. And for me, it's like I don't want a project. Like, I don't want to have to try to teach another adult how to communicate effectively, or that, like, I think what a lot of people encounter is with, like, the quote unquote problematic behavior. It's basic adult behavior that everybody knows, right? Like, a lot of problematic people will play dumb. Like, "Oh, I didn't know that was flirting. Oh, I didn't know that that bill was due on that day. I didn't know." And it's like, if you don't know this stuff by now, then I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not gonna take that on. I'm not trying to be your therapist or be your mother or be, you know what I mean? Like, you need to go figure all that stuff out, and good luck. Good luck to you. So, and I don't, and even still, like, I guess the whole, like, perpetual confusion part of it, for me, most conversations, if there's sincere intention there, can be resolved in a very short period of time, you know? So it's, if things are not getting resolved effectively, then there's a bigger issue at hand. Yes, Maria says, "Yes, Dana, I love that. I don't wanna be an adult. I don't want an adult who needs me. I'm no one's nurse, therapist, mother, etc." Yes, I agree. Tracy says, "Ugh, and they always want you to heal them. They project their BS onto you, then they blow up at you, and heaven forbid if you ever react, then you're abusive." I think the whole, they want us to heal them, is, it's all part of this whole, like, pity ploy. That's all part of the manipulation. So it's kind of this whole baby bird with a broken wing act that they do for us to let our guard down. And then it's a way for them to kind of set up this dynamic where we're taking care of them. It's all about them. And so we start building our life around them and walking on eggshells around them, trying to make sure that they're okay because they're somehow, wounded or what have you, which may or may not even be real. And then, um, when that abuse does come out, and we set up boundaries, it's just it's that abusive mindset. It's just all about them all of the time, and there is no sincere accountability, and there is no, remorse. They feel totally entitled to treat other people like garbage, and it's hard to not get sucked in the first time, maybe even the second time. But once you're aware of what's going on, it's a lot harder for you to get sucked in. You're going to be a lot quicker to see that it's a problem and to leave a lot sooner. But it can get discouraging, like what that gal was saying earlier about seeing problematic behavior in people and wanting to leave right away. And we can feel judgmental, and then we can feel like, man, am I making a big deal out of this? Especially if we have other people in our lives that are like, oh, well, no one's perfect. And who are you to judge? And you're just making a big deal out of nothing. And, he's not your ex or she's not your ex. And you just should, you've got to trust sometime. There's all kinds of that well intended bad advice floating around out there. And you know, your life is not a democracy. Something either works for you or it doesn't. And it's not up to other people to vote about the actions that you take. And it's totally okay. Like, it's totally okay for you to leave a situation just based off of a bad vibe. Like, you don't need to stick around and wait for them to prove you right, that they are cheating or that they can't be trusted or that they um what have you. Lilith says, I trust my vibes. Yes. Yeah, it's a big thing. Like, that's your first sign, like that whole kind of saying, like, energy doesn't lie. That vibe that you get, odds are you're getting it for a reason. It's generally for like a subconscious reason that's not surfacing at a conscious level for whatever reason. And our subconscious mind, our reptile brain and our limbic system pick up so much more information that does not make its way to our logical and critical thinking part of our brain. And so when we get when our instincts kick in, it's generally for a reason. Those parts of our brain are a lot older than the prefrontal cortex, like that logical and critical thinking part of our brain. So if you're feeling like something's off, it's generally because something's off. And really at the end of the day, I know a lot of people are gonna, might want to stay in a situation because they're like, well, but I'm not sure. I mean, all signs kind of point to that he's cheating or that she's whatever, stealing money or what have you. But I feel like I need more valid reason. This is where, for me, it goes back to a relationship is not worth mental anguish. If you're not getting clarity, if they're fighting you about stuff, if they're not giving you closure, if there's gaslighting going on, if there's, um, a bunch of squirrely behavior, like normal people with sincere intentions don't act like that, you know? Um, Somebody had mentioned something about self love. Oh, okay, that's a good one. New Chris says, it's just like, how do you reject the narcissist who seems so amazing to everyone else? She's like a celebrity, makes me feel she's right when she says I'm the problem. Well, that's difficult when you get somebody that is incredibly charming and that there's this kind of mask that they wear to the public where they're one person, but then to you, things are very different. To me, it goes back to at the end of the day, if this is a relationship where there's a lot of perpetual confusion, where like, is it her? Is it me? Like, I don't think it's me. All of that waffling back and forth, just that alone is not worth being in because it's not worth that mental anguish. It's that, and also you can use that concept of a constant. So, you've heard us talk about this before, but thinking about that person, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a sibling, maybe it was somebody, I don't know. So I don't know, somebody else that that you feel calm around. Like, you don't second guess their intentions. You're not spun into that introspection where you're like, is it me? Is it her? Like, what's going on? Where you feel safe, secure, like you can be yourself. Get yourself to that place, get grounded enough and think about how you are with that person that you feel constant around. And then think about how you feel with her. Because emotional manipulators, it's this continual, it's their behavior, it's erratic, dramatic, and emotional. And it knocks a person off balance continually. And sometimes there's periods where things are fine, and then all of a sudden, boom, things are really not fine. And then it's all kinds of all of a sudden communication just goes off the rails, and you don't know what's going on, and you're like, I don't get it, you know? But like you were saying, to everybody else, this woman seems great, but to you, it's not. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. If there's a saying out there, to avoid being around people that make you feel like you're difficult to love. There's a lot of truth in that, you know? So, and I think too, the more you can educate yourself about different forms of abuse, especially more covert forms. So I would do a lot of reading, or not even a lot of reading, but I would do some reading on like emotional abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse, because it really can help to have the words to describe what you're experiencing. I hope that helps. If you're looking for like verbal and emotional kind of stuff, the book The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans is fantastic. And she really covers a lot of both covert and overt kind of stuff that happens. My book that I wrote, the book Start Here, which you can find it on Amazon if you just do a search for Dana Morningstar on Amazon, that covers, I don't even know, 40 or 50 or so different definitions with examples of different situations that might help as well to kind of figure out what's going on. Because it can be difficult when you're in the middle of it, seeing things clearly. Agatha says, my therapist told me that I have a strong attraction to dangerous people. And so he had asked me, well, do you want to just spend the day with a lion? Yeah. I I think too, and you'll have to kind of do some soul searching and figure out what, when does that attraction first start? Because I think for most people, it starts with love bombing. It's not that people are necessarily attracted to like bad boys or maybe even dangerous people. It's earlier than that. It's that level of, constant um attention and affection. That's all about the love bombing. It's that level of intensity that I think gets most people. Most emotional manipulators are intense. They get their sights locked on to their target, and we mistake that level of interest as it like flattering oftentimes, like, wow, okay, I'm now on the radar of this person and they just seem to be so into me. But really it's very predatory. It's not flattering. So if you can kind of change how your relationship with love bombing, and slow, really like understanding love bombing and understanding that whirlwind situation and how to slow things down, understanding that you have the power to slow things down, and that it's okay and healthy for you to set the pace of every single relationship that's in your life, and that other people don't get to vote on that. And again, that might sound like really selfish and very one-sided, but it's not, because it's your life, you know? So even if you meet a new person and they're very quick to be like, I want to see you tonight, and I want to be with you, and I want to take you out for dinner, and I want, like, it's okay for you to say no. It's okay for you to slow things way down. If somebody new comes into your life and they're like, I really want to take you out. I want to take you out for dinner, and then I want to spend New Year's Eve with you, for example, that, like, for me, that's that's like prime time, right? So I'm not going to go spend like 6 hours with a total stranger, especially that night of the year. So for me, it might be like, what, we can meet for coffee. Like, I'd be up for maybe going for coffee, but like, like, I'm not gonna spend 6 hours with a stranger. Or I'm just making up examples here. Or if, I guess that the point being is you set the pace, and getting okay with that and getting okay with being uncomfortable about that because it's going to just take practice. And once you slow stuff down, and I will tell you that love bombing and that level of intensity, it can really feel like a drug. I think that's one of the hardest things to break, even though we know that that love bombing is not real, it's not sincere, it always leads to pain. Normal people don't come on like that. It's only people that are trying to basically use us for something, that tend to come on hot and heavy out of the blue. So it's hard to let go because it can feel so intoxicating, and it's exciting. And especially if a person doesn't have a lot of like other stuff going on in your life, it's very easy to be like, well, but I really want to talk to this other person for hours upon hours every day. And I'm totally okay with just giving them as much time as they want to soak up. And that's a problem. This is why it's so important for us to have our own hobbies and our own friends and like your own stuff going on in your life so that you're not going to feel pulled to wanting to make a person that you don't know that well your whole life. Because and I see this in the support group all the time. It's so easy for us to like, if a person's vulnerable and they're lonely and they've come out of abuse and they're just, you know, they're hurting, it's very normal for them to want to find to find love, to find somebody that's safe. And even if they've been out for years, they can still be susceptible to this. And then they start dating, and like that first date, they're like, "Oh, I've met this amazing new person. I hope this is the one. And I hope that I'm going to marry this person, or I hope that," and they're already like going so far ahead. And it's like the reality is like you don't even know this person. You've got to slow things down. Moving full speed ahead like that emotionally or physically is a recipe for disaster. But it takes practice, and it takes practice with us reframing how we understand love bombing and this whirlwind, and not thinking that it's the fairy tale. If a person feels like a soulmate, or if it feels like a fairy tale, that's a big sign to slow things way down, like way, 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 way down. If you're feeling like addicted to them, like you're checking your phone, hoping they've messaged you, hoping, whatever, that's a big sign to slow things way down. And that doesn't necessarily come from being hypervigilant due to PTSD or abuse. It just means that, you know, it's not healthy. And, healthy is realizing that you have value, and that you value your emotions, you value your time, you value your energy, and that you don't just give all that stuff freely to anybody and everybody. That it takes that stuff needs to be earned, not just freely given. AJ says, I've taken up painting, a little hobby that makes me feel good. I do feel lonely, but I won't sacrifice my safety or sanity for anyone. Yeah, good for you. Very cool. Painting as a that I'm excited for you. I think creative outlets, especially when we are going through something like this, it's just such a wonderful way to express ourselves. So that's very exciting. And the website meetup.com, I'm a huge fan of this. I talk about it all the time. That can be a really great place to go meet new people, do new things, kind of get back out there into life in a very non-dating kind of way. It can be just a really great way to just meet new people. Okay. Grace says, since it's my first time having boundaries, I feel a little nervous about it. Yeah, totally understandable. You're learning something new. It's like learning how to roller skate or ride a bike. You're going to stumble, you're going to fall, and that's okay. but you just kind of keep getting up and taking time to figure out, okay, well, what just happened? Like, what just happened there? And how can I avoid that from happening again? And then then you try again and you do things a little bit different next time. And then you kind of examine that and like, okay, well, what worked, what didn't work? And you keep doing it. Um, Liz says, I wish I could go to meetups. I have a disabled child, and the closest meetup is an hour away. I have little or no money for a babysitter. Does anyone have any ideas? Yeah, that can be kind of tricky. Depending on, I would encourage you to join as many different meetups as possible for starters, and to continue checking on a regular basis. Um, as far as new meetups that are happening, some meetups you can bring children to, so it just kind of depends. Um, there's you can a person can start their own meetup. There is a cost for it. I want to say it's something like $60 a year, and meetup.com will tell you the different meetups that people are interested in. Like they'll say something like, and this is a fairly new feature, something like, there are 37 people interested in meetups about, I don't know, like cooking or outdoor adventure or, trivia. And so then that kind of gives you an idea, if you were to start your own meetup, how many people would be interested in it. So you could kind of start that meetup and then instantly kind of have, probably 37 or whatever people join. Okay, let's see. AJ says, Dana, I'm in the UK. Do they have meetups over here? As far as I know, that they are worldwide, as far as I'm aware. And then HB says, oh, LOL, I met him in a meetup group. Okay, so and this is not to say, let me let's just touch on this for a little bit. This isn't to say that any place is a safe place, right? Like there's gonna be predators and abusive people and emotional manipulators in general. So they're gonna be in support groups, they're gonna be in AA groups, they're gonna be police officers, they're gonna be attorneys, they're gonna be therapists, they're gonna be, you know, like teachers, they're gonna be nurses, they're gonna be um, people in meetup groups, they're gonna be, they're people and they're out there. And so I think a lot of people tend to have this, I was one of them, had kind of this very black or white thinking like, okay, online dating is bad, but support groups are safe, or that there was some sort of 100% safe place. And the reality is that there is no such thing as a safe place. Please don't let this add anxiety or fuel to like your already anxiety driven fire. This is, I'm saying this because knowledge is power, or probably more accurately, like application of knowledge is power. So there's, it's always important to have healthy boundaries no matter where you are. And that takes practice too. It's so easy. It's so easy for any of us to feel comfortable in a place and to think like, okay, I can let my guard down and just have and act, and just not have boundaries in a certain place because thinking that that's a safe place, you know? And the reality is time will tell as to whether or not that's a good place. It's a safe place for you. But meetup.com, the reason I like meetup.com is because it's not a dating site and you can go there and you can meet new friends, meet new people, just meet new people. They may or may not be friends. Time will tell, right? But like you can meet new people, you can do new things, and it's in a very kind of non-committal way. So you can sign up for a meetup. So let's say, for example, the group is outdoor adventures and they have an outdoor adventure planned on a Saturday where everybody's going to go tubing. And, you can sign up to go to that and you can go tubing with these people and you can kind of see like, do you click with any of them or do you not click with any of them? And then continue going to these different meetups and just kind of taking it from there. And if you get there and you kind of just get the vibe, you're like, these are just not my people at all, like at all. I don't want to meet anybody here. I don't want to spend time with anybody here. Like you can always just get back in your car and leave. So, and what happens is a lot of people tend to think, oh, I'm really lonely. I'm really sad. I could really use a friend. I know. I'll go start dating again. And then they put themselves out there, and then they keep crashing into all of these, predatory, insincere people that are looking for sex, that are looking for money, that are looking for God knows what. And then they continue to get hurt, and they don't understand, they start to feel cursed. Like, what's so wrong with me? Why do I keep attracting these people? And the reality is, it's not so much that we're necessarily attracting them. Like, they're attracted to supply, you know? If they're looking for sex, they're going to be looking for anybody that's going to that they're even remotely attracted to. And if they're looking for money, then they're going to be attracted to anybody that has money. So it's not just you, it's not just me. They're after supply. And our boundaries are what protect us from keeping those kinds of people around. So that initially they might be really attracted to us and we might be really attracted to them because they're all of that love bombing and that charm and that intensity and, saying all the right things. We might find ourselves slipping into that. But at the end of the day, if you remind yourself, like, I have got to slow things down, I'm feeling very strong feelings for this person that I don't know or I haven't met or that I barely know, and I need to back things up, then those boundaries are going to be what protects you from from staying involved with people like that. Because they're out there and they're all going to come across in different ways, and they can slide under your radar. I mean, I've had a handful come in my life, in the past few years. And so it's all about kind of getting them out sooner than later, and trying to just keep learning along the way. CB says, we deserve better. I'm using Dana's list as a boundary checklist. And then I'm flattered. Thank you. Uh, but then I would just really encourage you to come up with your own. And I would really encourage you to read that book, Boundaries After a Pathological Relationship. It's so much stuff in there. She just really lists it out. Very eye opening. So, and to the whole thing with trust is, so many of us feel like, okay, we have trouble trusting. And that, when people often say that, they're like, I have trouble trusting, what they tend to mean is, I have trouble trusting people and accepting people at face value like I used to. And the reality is, what we were doing before was never healthy. So it's appropriate to not trust people or take them at face value. It's just, it's a good idea to, to take things slow. And in the book, the Brene Brown book, the Daring Greatly book, she talks about this. She says, trust is like a marble jar. And every time a person proves that they can be trusted, then a little, one, I don't know, I think she said blue marble drops in. And if a person does something that's untrustworthy, then we take a marble out. And it's all about kind of filling up that marble jar with trust marbles. And then at the top, then at that point, then you can consider them a friend, right? Or you can consider them like a person to really be in a relationship with. But then she also brought up the really great point is if there's something like egregious that happens that makes you dump that marble jar out, then that's okay too. Because not every event that's a trust breaker is necessarily something that you just remove one marble out of the jar. And I think that's another thing that many of us have been going about um, kind of, I don't want to say the wrong way, but the hard way is we've kind of been treating all acts the same. So it's like we meet a new person and instead of starting off with that empty marble jar being like, I don't know you. I don't know if you're trustworthy. Like you seem like a nice person. You seem pretty grounded and level-headed and, like you see what you can get, but time will tell. So we're starting with that empty marble jar. And then let's say you have plans to go kayaking that weekend, and you say, okay, we're going to go at 6 p.m. and they show up at 6 p.m. Okay. You can, one marble goes in the jar. They've proven that they were trustworthy to show up at the time that they said that they would show up. And then you do see what I'm saying? And so like all these different events, like you're getting one marble in, one marble in, one marble in. And then if something happens, you agree to meet at 6 and they show up at 7, then one marble out. But a one marble out event would not be something that's like abuse, addiction, adultery, you know, um, or like really awful attitude. That for me, those would be grounds of like dumping out the marble jar and then being done. So getting clear in your mind of like what's a what are kind of different ways that you're looking at with building trust with another person, and what are some trust breakers, and are you giving are you assigning all behavior equal weight when perhaps you shouldn't be? Dress to impress says, that's a good idea, Dana. Yes, time will tell. Yeah, and that's the thing. When you realize like you don't have there's no pressure. Like in this book, the book Boundaries After a Pathological Relationship, she says, none of us are good judges the character. Like we all think that we are, but nobody is because we don't know. People can put on such a good front, but time will tell. And the reality too is the wolves in wolves clothing, we can tend to spot those people pretty quickly, but the wolves in sheep's clothing take longer. And so we might be a good judge of character in the sense that it's you might get that vibe of this is not, a dangerous or destructive person. It's difficult to get, like you might get a false positive, like they might come across as really charming and you know sincere, and they're not. But it's very difficult to get a false negative. So like if you do get that vibe that this person's dangerous or destructive, just go with that vibe. Like I wouldn't give a person a second chance with that kind of stuff. Um, let's see. Liz asks, what was the name of the book again? That marble example. That was the book Daring Greatly. And that was the last book club book that we discussed. You can find that video if you're interested in my YouTube videos. it's ca- it's called book club. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Called book club discussion. Like, yeah, book club discussion or something. Daring greatly, and it should come up. Okay. Oh, and here's the thing too. So with trust. So we might be doing this whole marble jar thing with building trust, right? The I think what really helps to reinstill that trust is realizing that you can trust yourself. That you can trust yourself. Like, we don't need other people. Like, other people are going to act how they're going to act. We have no control over that. All we have control over is how we respond to that. So, w- you know, w- we can trust ourselves to walk away from a situation, whereas before we got dragged through hell because it was like we didn't know we could walk away, we didn't feel right walking away, we thought that everybody was like us, we thought if we could just get through to them that things would be different. We had all sorts of kind of incorrect assumptions about what was going on because you're a normal decent person, this kind of stuff is not even on their radar of possibility. So how would you have known? Like, you wouldn't have. You have to I really feel like people just have to kind of go through this stuff in order to fully understand it, because it's one thing to read about it or to learn about it, it's another thing to actually live it. So, now that you're aware of how much damage another person can do in your life, and that communication doesn't solve everything, and that our love can't fix other people, then you're going to be a lot more inclined to be like, you know what? I really value my peace in my life, and I'm not gonna ever let anybody impact me that way again. And so I might trust them or I might not trust them, but I definitely trust myself to know when a situation is not right for me and for me to walk away from it. And the more you can trust yourself, the easier it's going to be for you to be comfortable around others, because you're not holding your breath hoping that they're going to treat you okay. Because they're going to treat you how they're going to treat you, and you're going to respond accordingly. You got this. Like, you guys know, what's up, you know? You've learned a lot by going through all this stuff. Let's see here. AJ asks, who's the author of the Boundaries After a Pathological Relationship book? That was, why do I keep forgetting her name? I love her name. It's Adeline, Adelyn Birch. Adeline Birch. It's a great book. Amber says, I feel safer overweight. I unfortunately use it as a buffer to protect myself. Yes, I think a lot of people do, myself included. That was a very big aha moment that I had this year. Did not realize that that was the case. So it's interesting. Here's the kind of the blessing and the curse to going through one of these relationships where with an emotional manipulator, where you're just like this bomb goes off in your life, and you're trying to rebuild piece by piece, and there's just so much to figure out, and it can be very overwhelming, but at the same time it can, man, I tell you, there's just no shortage of personal growth and insights that can come from this. And uh I in my own life have found that kind of the greater the pain in something, the greater the lesson. And, this has kind of been gonna be my thing for 2018 is self-love, is really learning to value myself. And I have been at war with my body since I hit puberty, and I hit puberty young. So I've gone through eating disorders. I've gone through just hating my body for many, many decades, really. I mean, it's all, and I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm done. I really want to just develop a healthy relationship with food, a healthy relationship with exercise, a healthy relationship with the mirror. And It's interesting, Missouri Cowboy was talking earlier tonight about self-care and aging and all of this, and that was one of the thoughts that I had earlier today was this is really gonna be an interesting thing because I'm moving into this stage of trying to love myself and love what I see and accept all this, and it's gonna be interesting to realize, okay, then I'm also kind of dealing with aging stuff, and how is that gonna balance out? So, and in a way, I kind of feel like it's another plate I have to try to spin with trying to figure all this out, but, uh, so I don't know. I'm trying to just change my I don't know, I just wanna, like, love this life, Like, we're here, and it's just too short to do anything else? So and then realizing and here's kind of the irony thing too with being overweight is that I had realized of I was wearing really and I still do, but I'm trying to get better at it with it. I was wearing really baggy clothes and as a way of hiding. But then the irony is I'm sure people were like, "Why is that woman wearing such baggy clothes?" Like it had the exact opposite effect. It brought I think more attention to me because I was swimming in my clothes and um it's the same thing with being overweight. Like on some level, like you see these people on YouTube that are like, my 600-pound life or whatever. And oftentimes that weight is this barrier from the outside world. But in several ways, it has the opposite effect of it draws more attention to a person and can make them even more vulnerable for predators. It's interesting. It's just, and it's a brain thing. It's something that happens, I think, subconsciously with how we cope with things. But um, I don't know. I guess for me, realizing I have been holding on to all of this weight as a protective thing. And now that I realize that that's what I was doing, that I'm ready to release that. Like I can handle things. Like I'm going to be okay. I can trust myself. I know when a situation feels off. I know what works for me. I know what doesn't work for me. And I want to eat like I love myself. I want to move like I love myself. I want to enjoy my body. I want to just love myself? So, so I don't know. I've been going to the gym and it's interesting. It's interesting how we can do the same activities. Like you know, when I had eating disorders, it would be going to the gym or like eating food in a very certain regimented way. But it's so crazy how we can be doing the same things, but if our mindset's different, then everything is different. And I was so scared. I was seriously so like to the point of crying. Like I was so scared to start counting calories because I'm like, I know myself and I don't want to become obsessive about this. Like I just want to have a healthy relationship with food. And I've been on both extremes of things. My weight has like radically fluctuated over the years. And um so now I'm doing this thing where I'm more aware of calories. I don't count specifically. Like I don't want to even open that door because I know myself. So I just try to estimate, like, okay, like this meal is roughly, you know, 500 calories or 350 calories or what have you. And then just to keep that in my awareness and for my height and my activity level, like I really want to keep my calories probably, 1,200 to 1,400 calories a day. So at least I'm just more aware of it. Whereas before I was, kind of munching on stuff here and there. And it's just amazing how like that stuff can just add up. Tameline says, Dana, this is my life. Yes, awesome. Little Miss says, I have been obsessive about thriving after abuse and it has saved my life. Yes. Yes, me too. And speaking of which, we are going to be starting another group here shortly. I am waiting to trying to land on a name for it, but we're going to be starting another group, another Facebook group, in addition to the one that we already have. This new one is going to be all about like us, boundaries, self-care, self-love, self-esteem, and the conversation about the narcissist is going to and I still need to kind of flesh out what I want that group to be, but I really would like to have a group that's more about us in this next chapter and us thriving instead of the focus being on the narcissist. But real quick, let me just say this for the new people here. I do feel that that part of like focusing on the narcissist, focusing on the abuse, getting all of that anger out and talking about how we've been victimized, that's a very, I don't want to discount that. I think that's an incredibly important, and it's the beginning stages of healing, and it's a necessary stage, and it's a painful stage. So that group will stay where it's at. But I think what has been going on that I've seen a lot is people that get to a certain place, like Little Miss was saying, they get to this place where they're like, I can't be around all of this talk about just the narcissist. I want to just focus on me now. Like I'm ready to just focus on me and my boundaries and standards and deal breakers and all of this stuff and not talk. So what I'm thinking is if people wanted to join, you could possibly join both groups and then have kind of, whatever. So still have to kind of get some stuff figured out, but I think it'll be good. Daniel says, the problem with Facebook is I don't want my friends and family knowing I'm in such a group. Yeah. Thank you. The Temeline says, yes, Daniel, make a fake name. Yeah, that's the best way to do it. You can also go into your privacy settings and you can make it to where other people cannot see what groups you're in. Although it might still down the road show that you're in there. I don't know. I don't place a lot of like faith in how Facebook handles group stuff. It makes me nervous. But yes, creating a fake profile is the best way to just breathe easy and be in groups and not have to worry about it. So right now we've got to get land on a name, and I might just do a placeholder name until we can land on one, just so we can get it going. I'll have something going by next Wednesday though. So I will make that known. And then there's like a lot of other things to kind of figure out because I feel like my time the existing Facebook group, we're at about 50,000 people and the admins in there are like it's a full-time job for them. It really is. They're in there. I'm in there, but I'm in there not near as much as they are. So I don't want to um, burn them out, or I don't know. So I kind of need to figure out like how we're going to do this. So if we start this new group, it might be kind of a rogue. Like we're going to have to kind of figure some stuff out. It might be a little bit rough at first while I can kind of figure out the balance of time with everything. But we'll figure it out. We'll get there. Amber says, yes, Dana, I'm so over worrying about what I look like. I will never be Barbie. I feel bad when I see younger girls and that's all their goal is to look like a Kardashian. Like nobody's body is like that. Yeah, I seriously feel bad for young girls because, when I was growing up, you had celebrities. I'm trying to even think like who would have been a celebrity. I don't even know if I can think of any that I really I remember being in college and my roommate putting up a picture of Kate Moss on our refrigerator. And I remember thinking she was nuts because Kate Moss was so, so thin. But outside of that, I can't. But even then, it was like it was unobtainable. Do you know what I mean? It was like, okay, that's a model. Like, I'm never gonna look like her, and I have no desire to look like her. So I don't, it didn't appeal to me. But what's interesting now is, for especially for younger girls, like the whole, Kylie and like the Kardashian clan, um, they're so much more kind of infiltrated into mainstream culture. They have their own makeup brand, and they have YouTube videos. So there's this more of this kind of feel that almost is obtainable, right? Like, you kind of know them almost because they're on social media and they have YouTube videos, and there's almost this sense, and you can watch the Keeping Up with the Kardashians and all of that. And so, and especially with Kylie, because she's younger, I mean, she's had a ton of work done. And I think in Instagram in general, for people to go on there and to see that and uh, feel like, okay, my body should look like that. And probably the vast majority of the Instagram models there have had a ton of work done. So it's a very, excuse me, very skewed sense of like reality and obtainability. It's disturbing. Yeah, Codependent Warrior says they say that the narcissist is a messenger about what we need to change in ourselves. It does not take away the abuse, but we can then heal once we know why we were love bombed. Yes. So let me elaborate on that, because I saw somebody else that had an issue with that comment. Let me just make that clear. When you say, okay, the narcissist is the messenger about what we need to kind of work on or change within ourselves. This is not to say that what the narcissist has told us that's wrong about us that we need to change. Just trying, I know that's not what Codependent Warrior meant. I just want to clarify that for other people. So they might have told you that you're, stupid, fat, and ugly, and all of these things. Don't ever listen to an abusive person. It's like trying to take the things that a bully says seriously. Like, they're designed to grind you down. Like, it's not truth. It's just their own insecurities and unhappiness that are coming out onto other people. Um so yes, what the narc might tell us isn't necessarily what we need to work on, but what we do need to work on is, and even if the stuff was like fantastic to begin with, which it probably wasn't, but even if it was, to re-examine our boundaries and our standards and our deal breakers and our self-care and our self-love and our vulnerabilities and all of that. And all of that stuff can be brought to the surface of, wow, okay. Like, this is some stuff that I now need to examine and possibly most likely work on. Yeah, Adriana's talking about weight and stuff. She says, being kind to yourself. If it's not easy, but it's very important. Even just a small change like eating an apple can have great effects. Yes, I agree completely. Completely. And for me too, it's been really being in that moment of like letting that soak in. What am I doing for myself? That's self-care in this moment. And just kind of leaning into that, and paying attention to how good it feels, and how just how nourished I feel. Like, it really does feel good to just eat a salad, or to go to the gym, or go for a walk, or get a massage, or kind of it feels good to take care of yourself. Okay, Bonnie Says, "Hey Dana, how do you build yourself up after so much has been stolen from us by the narcissist over time?" I think it starts with getting a really compelling vision of what you want in your life in this next chapter. So, setting a course for kind of what you want. I mean, the beauty in having your life blown apart is that you get to choose which pieces you're going to rebuild with. So, there's a lot of power in that. And for me, it gave me a lot of clarity about like what's important and what's not. It made me realize and I think if anything, at the end of the day, it made me realize how much I could really rely on myself, and uh, it's intense. It's intense. It's hard. It's hard to get past money, losing time, losing friends, losing self-esteem. All it's hard. It's hard being blown apart and starting at ground zero and having to rebuild with all of that. But it is possible. You can do it, and it's one step at a time. And this time around, when you go about kind of rebuilding your life and all of that, it's going to be a lot more intentional. And there's a lot of, I think, strength and kind of beauty that comes from that, from things really being intentional like that. So I view a lot of the time that I spent with these people and the money that I've spent, I really view it as just kind of tuition at the school of hard knocks. And frankly, it's been some of the best time and money I've ever spent. I never thought in a million years I would ever say that, but it's the personal growth and all of the lessons have been to have I don't think I could have gotten them any other way, and I wouldn't trade all that. I'm not saying I wanna go through all that again, but I wouldn't trade all of that. I it's just such a crash course into reconnecting with yourself. It's just so huge, you know? So, I guess that's how, in large part, like excuse me, I don't even know why I'm yawning, I'm not even tired. That's how, I've been able to kinda make peace with a lot of it. But then the other part of it too with building yourself up is a lot of it's been self-talk. I was very big on affirmations. I um, had many poster boards, that I got at like Michael's and would write like inspirational things down because I was at such a low point where I was just clinging to anything. I was so out in the middle of this emotional ocean. It was a very, very hard time. And there are days where I still look back on where I was and I'm just overwhelmed with I'm surprised in many ways. I'm surprised I made it out because I had many really scary low days. But, holding on, finding things that nourish your spirit and give you hope and realize that you can move forward from this. It's not necessarily easy, but it's worth it. And it can be enjoyable too. Climbing out of this hole doesn't have to be this painful, dark, awful process. There's a lot of parts of it that it can actually be enjoyable. I mean, it can be enjoyable to go to meetups and it can be enjoyable to practice your boundaries and to, be here and like participate in book clubs and um learning about self-care and taking part in self-care is huge. Zamika says, "Yes, the knowledge and lessons are huge. I was so closed and naive. I was in a bubble." Yeah, I think most normal, decent people are. It's just this stuff's not taught. and it's not even on the radar for most people. And like we were talking about earlier, like with cults or any other type of like outrageously problematic like scams and cults and abusive relationships, no one thinks it's going to happen to them. Everybody thinks that they could spot it a mile away and that they would never get involved with something like that. And everybody that thinks that is wrong, because it's nobody gets involved, nobody gets into a relationship being, or nobody joins a group thinking that they're joining a cult, just like nobody gets into a relationship thinking that they're getting into an abusive relationship. You know, it happens gradually over time, and it's done through like a series of problematic behavior that we continually justify because it's not on our radar of understanding that it could actually be as big of a problem as it is. So, you know, uh yeah, Agatha says, I love vision boards, as do I, Agatha. They are fantastic. I still need to make one for 2018. I made a um oh, I kind of like charted out goals for 2018. There's a series of books that I want to get written, and I want to get my existing books into paperback and stuff like that, but I also want to do a vision board about kind of things that I just want to manifest. That sounds so woo woo, but things that I kind of want to manifest in my life. So, like some of my other stuff that I would like to have in 2018 is I really want to get more involved in cooking. So, it's that Britain's Best Baking Show has seriously like lit the biggest fire under me. I I'm going to start off, I think, with Indian cooking. And I'm also going to try to cook more like vegan stuff. So, I think that'll be fun. So I'd like to cook at least one new meal and have like a little mini dinner party thing like every single month. I think that's going to be one of the things that's on my vision board. And I don't know. I need to think about what else is going to go on there. And I would agree. Lola says, I honestly don't think that they are human in the same way we are. Humans have empathy. Yes, I would agree. And I think that's one of the reasons we have such a difficult time understanding their behavior. I think that's probably the number one thing that people struggle with the most in the support group is fully like trying to wrap their mind around the fact that this person just does not care. It just doesn't compute for normal people, because normal people have empathy, they have remorse, they are team oriented, they tend to want to bond to other people and to come across other human beings that don't want that or are incapable of doing that, but yet then pretend that that's what they do want. It's just so outrageous. And if like, and it's just this progression of thinking. Like I see this all the time in the support group, and I had it too, where people are like, okay, well, but what if they bond deeply in love and they don't abuse the next person? Like, what if they're totally happy with the next person? And it's like, no, it's like you're still not fully understanding. Like this is them. This is not you or the next partner. No, they're not, it's them. And then they're like, okay, well, I can't believe I just had this baby and they don't even care. And how do they not care about their baby? And it's like, it's them. Like they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. It's all about them all of the time. And there's no emotion of depth. There is no, I talked about this before. Like normal people, I think, tend to think they're evil. Um, for lack of a better term, evil has rules. We see this in horror movies, right? Like with vampires, vampires have garlic and they have sunlight and they have holy water. And where werewolves have silver bullets. And there's kind of all of these rules for evil that evil plays within this. Zombies only can they must kind of move fairly slow, and if you shoot them in the head, then that's when they're done. And a werewolf, it's a silver bullet, and what have you. or vampires can only come in when you invite them in. These kinds of things, but the reality of evil is that doesn't have rules. The real vampires out there they can be priests. They can be around holy water. They can eat garlic. They can uh, you know, uh, say all these wonderful things. They can be out during the day. And it's hard. It's just hard. It's hard for a normal person to understand that they just operate in a very, very different way than we do. Adriana says, Dana, I really love that quote that it's the tuition you pay in the school of hard knocks. That has helped me tremendously. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. And honestly, and I think that the added part to that is in realizing that it can be, I don't want to minimize anybody's pain here, but it can be time and money it's well spent because of all of the stuff that you can then learn from it. So, uh, you know, I've been to college twice now, and there's been a lot of classes that I've paid a lot of money for and that I learned absolutely nothing from. And so with these experiences, yeah, it cost me time and money, but I learned a lot from it. And it's not that the situation, it's not about the situation even. It's about us. It's about what we decide that we're going to learn from it. It's us making that conscious decision to squeeze out everything that we possibly can for our highest and greatest good. It's sort of like the saying goes, we can go through things in life or we can grow through things in life. And if we're going to be going through stuff anyhow, then we might as well squeeze out as much as we can and grow through it and make it work for our highest and greatest good. Bonnie says, but I wasted so much time and spiritual energy on the narcissist. I know it can feel like a waste because the results weren't what we were hoping. But in many ways, you have you've learned so much. I think there's so much that we can get out of these experiences in our life. And I think we all tend to have this idea. I had mentioned this the other night that we all have these different lives that we are living. We have this life that maybe our parents feel that we should be living. Like other people feel like we should be living this life. Then there's the life that we feel that we should be living. And then there is this life that we actually are living. And then there's this life that's trying to live through us. And it's that last life, the life that's trying to live through us. And oftentimes it takes this breaking down of the life that we are living in order for that other life to start shining through. I mean, if you've ever listened to any type of, motivational movie or thing where people end up their lives just become very inspirational or they have kind of these great awakenings, it always follows a tremendous amount of pain. And so I don't know. I guess I know it can be hard to not look at it as like it was just absolutely wasted, but there's so much that you can still take from that. Like going through that such tremendous amounts of pain, it can make a person a lot more compassionate. It can make a person a lot more caring. It can really help you get clear on like what your priorities are in life. It can help you reconnect with yourself and your intuition and your emotions and your self-care, and get clear on like what your priorities are. So there's still a lot of good that you can squeeze out of it. Peace was saying something about a narcissist and suicide. You know, generally, when an emotional manipulator threatens suicide, it's generally attention seeking. It's generally to make a person feel guilty, or to kind of jump into action to save them. Um, they oftentimes don't go through with it. They might though. I mean, they might accidentally overdose or accidentally do something. Y- And sometimes they might in their life intentionally. The only thing any of us can do if we've got a suicidal person in our life, whether whoever they might be, is all you can do is call emergency services and just say, this person is threatening suicide. Can you please send them help? Those are the right people to respond for that. And that also works in your favor, because if it is the kind of, they're cry for attention or cry for help or trying to, use guilt or pity to get you back in, they're going to realize really quick that that does not work with you, because you're just going to call 911. So they're going to stop, because when people threaten suicide like that, especially narcissists, of like, well, I'm just going to end it now. And I guess there's no reason. And I just, blah, blah, blah. It's, it's like holding a person emotionally hostage. And that to me is really not cool. So I would call 911, and then if they actually are suicidal, then they can get the help that they need. But you don't need to reopen contact with them. You don't need to respond. You don't need to, don't let them puppeteer you. So, True Love asks about any advice on narcissistic mothers and their daughters. There are groups specifically for narcissistic mothers and their daughters, which I would highly recommend joining. You can find them if I would Google narcissistic mothers and their daughters. It's a lot of it's this, even though it's a different dynamic, it's the same principles. Kind of figuring out like, okay, where are your boundaries? And um, are you going to go, how are you going to respond to that? Are you going to go low contact? Are you going to go no contact? Are you going to stay full contact and go gray rock? What do you need to do in order to keep yourself safe and sane, and to kind of limit the damage that's done? So, yeah, I hope that helps. Um, Dress to impress is Dana. My mom always told me when someone was rude or having bad behavior to try to see the good. Hold on, I gotta adjust here. Try to see the good in them. Yeah, and again, that's one of those kind of platitudes I think that people tend to throw around to make the situation maybe more tolerable. And I'm a big fan of kind of knowing yourself and like knowing where your deal breakers are, and you can still, because here's the thing, like abusive people, even serial killers, like people are not very rarely 100% bad or good. Like most, even like extreme personalities like that might have certain things about them that are likable. So that doesn't mean that you still need to allow them into your life, or that you need to spend time with them, or that you need to, focus on the good. I would try to not so much focus on the good in them, but focus on the reality of the situation. If this is a situation that's dangerous or destructive to you emotionally or physically, then that's a sign that you need to distance yourself from it, whatever that might mean, whether that's, gray rock, whether that's low contact, whether that's no contact, what have you. But I think it's very important that we see these situations clearly and take appropriate action in order to keep yourself safe. Okay, let's see. Well, thank you. Bricks and Feathers. Thank you for the donation. Says Dana, you were generous to let me download your book for free, but I'd like to pay you for them as well as make a small donation to thank you for your channel and everything you do. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I hope that you liked the books. And yeah, I'm thrilled that I am able to periodically let people donate them for free. Amazon gives me 5 free days in a 90-day period for people to download books. And so I'd like to kind of spread. I wish they did 6, because then it would just be a simple, like, 2 days, a month kind of a thing. Um, but that it is a nice time because, I get that there's issues around, people, not everybody has money to buy books, and people can be concerned about if they share an Amazon account with their abusive partner and what have you. So I would like to see about getting my books, once they get into paperback, at least possibly into libraries too. I don't even know how I go about that, but that's one of the things. So I'm glad. Thank you again, and I'm glad that this channel and all of this could be helpful. Bonnie says, when do you do the free downloads? Um, I need to go check to see when I think I have 2 days. I think I have 2 days left. I don't know. I normally announce them. So I'll let you guys know next Wednesday. I have to go check and see if I have any free days left. Maria says, Dana, do you have any guilt making money off of this topic? I'm curious. It's something that I don't know if it's necessarily guilt, but it is something that I struggle with. Um, because I think well, for starters, it's a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I want to get my information out there like as much as possible. Um, and you've got a bunch of vulnerable people, and I don't know, that part doesn't sit right with me. Like, selling things that people like that vulnerable people need to them. But I struggled with this as a nurse too, where it was sort of like, if a person didn't have the funds to get like a glucometer or glucose strips or whatever it was, or a blood pressure cuff, it was very difficult for me when I was like doing home care, for example. It was very difficult for me to leave that house knowing that that person didn't have what they needed. And I know that probably is blurred boundaries and like codependency kind of stuff, but I guess part of me really just feels that this stuff should be free. I feel like this should, and I don't know how to do that. In back to like this stuff, I don't know how to do that and still be able to do that full time. So that's something that I'm still trying to figure out. My ultimate goal would be to have as much of what I do for free as possible. A lot like AA. Like, I really like the model of like the AA, the anonymous programs in general, where it's free. People can start their own groups. It's you know groups have donations that just funds that specific group. There's kind of a rotation. There's not like one person in charge. um so I could s- that would be kind of the direction that I would eventually be heading in. I'm not sure how that's all going to unfold, but that would that would be the goal. I mean, but I love giving my books out for free. Here's the thing though with the books where it's kind of a catch 22 is there's a whole like perception of value thing. I know I fall in, even though like I'm aware that this is a thing, I still totally fall into this. So it's like if something is free, people tend to not give it a lot of value. They think, oh, what's free? How, it's probably not that, doesn't, it's probably not that valuable. So they're very quick to kind of discount it. And especially on Amazon. So I was asking my writers group about this, and their advice was they were very much like, you need to make sure that you price your books like in the same ballpark as other books in your genre, because if you price it really low, then what's going to happen is you're going to get a bunch of like one-star reviews and people that are going to think that there's something wrong with this book because it's only like, I don't know, whatever, $1.99 or whatever, and they're going to give you a bunch of like one-star reviews. So, like it has the exact opposite effect. So you might think that you're going to reach a lot of people with a cheap book, but odds are it's going to bring out like it's going to bring out a lot of the difficult people that are going to get a book for $1, and then they're going to just tear it to shreds and kind of it's just not going to work. So I thought that was interesting. That's one of the reasons I I have been kind of doing what I'm doing on Amazon. So I don't know. I don't know how it'll unfold. I don't know. Maria says, Dana, I see your struggle and I personally feel you have every right to make money from it. Uh, if your extreme empathy is overriding your natural desire, which you may suppress to be making a living, food for thought. Oh, totally. Totally. It is a hard line to walk. And I need to figure out a way. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like the only example that I can think of that feels good to me is the AA model. And so I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could make this into like a nonprofit and that would, I don't know. I don't know. I'm open to ideas. But right now I don't, I don't know how all of that's going to necessarily unfold. So, oh, thank you, Sable Miner. That's interesting name, Sable Miner. Thank you. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate it. And yeah, I don't know. Well, it's something I need to figure out. People are still talking about all this. Um, the one thing, well, the one thing that comes to mind, I guess I should say, about AA and like what really resonates with me about that is they have been able, they have a concept that we know works. I'm a big fan of like not reinventing the wheel, right? So like what do we know works? And their 12-step program by and large, it works for a lot of people. And I think what works about that is because there is no one person at the helm. It's the guys, there was two guys named Bill that started AA. Like it's not, Bill's group. It's focused on healing and it's focused on sobriety, and that's the only criteria, and it's not about personalities, it's not about money, it's not about any of this. It's about people that want to get sober and or want to get healing of any kind depending on the different group. So they're doing that right, and I think that they have um they have the big book and they have the just kind of that you don't give advice. It's a group where people can just talk. There is no judgment, and it's anonymous, and it's just a safe, supportive place. So I would like to take a lot of the concepts of what's working for AA and see if we can somehow kind of duplicate that. But like I said, outside of that, I'm not sure how all that's going to go down, and I'm not sure how to make things free and then still make a living doing what I'm doing. If anybody has any ideas, please let me know. Sable Miner says, I wanted to send you some cash so you could cash me outside. That girl was something else, huh? And yes, Daniel says, I heard that AA steps help non-alcoholics as well. Yes. So there's groups called Al-Anon. There's also Codependence Anonymous. And all of the all of the anonymous groups are free. And the um what is it? Not Alcoholics Anonymous, the families, like the Al-Anon groups for like families of alcoholics kind of a thing. Those groups can really be fantastic because it really, you talk about kind of the same personality type, you know, where this whole family is, when you've got an addict or an alcoholic, the whole dynamic of the family is, it needs to work on like boundaries and deal breakers and standards and expectations and self-care and self-love and like letting go. And there's a lot of very similar things in that, and there's a lot of um, lessons that can be applied to this stuff for sure, but I think to life in general. Oh, the Blue Fairy Jasmine says, I'm watching with a glass of wine and incense burning and at peace because I'm free now to do so. This is therapy for the soul. That sounds like my ideal night. Yeah, and I'm glad. I'm glad that you're free, and I'm glad that you're hanging out and doing things that you love. That's awesome. That's what, it's self-care and freedom and peace is where it's at. Oh, well, thank you, Carol. Carol says, your experience and helpful insight is worth its weight in gold. Thank you, Dana. Yes, you are so welcome. And seriously, I am, I, it's amazing. It's amazing that I can help in this way. Like I would have never, um, I don't know, never kind of thought that, you know? Um, so I'm really glad. I'm really glad that my insights, my hard-won insights and mistakes can help other people. Okay, let's see. Nikki says, also, you don't have to do these chats. I'm grateful for you. Yeah. I started doing these chats. It's been 2 years, 2.5 years now. And I started doing them because I was getting so many emails from people and I couldn't keep up anymore with responding. And so I just said, okay, bring your questions. I'll be here on Wednesday night and I'll do my best to just answer them in public, and hopefully uh, the discussions that we have can, because we all tend to have, people tend to have the same questions, and I don't, by all means, do not feel like that I have all the answers, but I think where the magic happens is hearing the responses from people in the chat and hearing responses from people in the comments on YouTube, and it's that collective kind of synergy that happens when everybody comes together. That's where the magic happens. And so um, I I felt very pulled to do these chats, and in large part, not only for the reason that I just mentioned, but also because this is going to sound really kind of strange, but because I felt so uncomfortable being live, doing a live chat, and I felt so uncomfortable with technology. And um, but I kept having this feeling of I need to do this, and so it's taken me, like I said, it's 2.5, 3 years. I'm to the point now where I am more comfortable really with just in the past few months with doing these chats. I used to have such extreme anxiety, and it was like ridiculous how worked up I would get, but I kept having this feeling of like, Dana, you need to be doing this. Just get, you need to be, not to necessarily even help other people, but it felt like this was the next step, and I needed to get okay with this because there's going to be a step after this. I don't even know what that is or what that could be, but I will tell you though, now I feel like what I have learned from doing these live chats is it's really helped me to shape and refine how I think about all of this information. And you think it's weird, like when I do a recorded video for YouTube, um, I normally have a script. I write things out in like bullet point, and then I talk about them. And then I read the comments and uh, learn from, what points I should have covered, which points helped people, and then I can kind of refine as I go. But going live is very, very different, and it's you know, it's something that really takes a lot of practice doing until it gets more comfortable. But I'm glad because I feel like it's your brain just processes things differently when you're live versus when you're recording. So I wouldn't I wouldn't trade it. I'm really it's just weird. It's weird how things just lined up because I started my blog, started YouTube, started doing the live streams, like was going no, I started people were emailing me questions and then I was answering them on videos. And then like a month after that, YouTube launched the live streaming capabilities. And then I began doing that. And then YouTube, like, I don't know, maybe about a year or so into it, then they launched the donation feature for live streams where people could actually donate, which was a big game changer for not only me, but for like a lot of YouTubers. And then, so I don't know. It's just interesting how it just keeps evolving. Lucy says, Dana, I would love to see you make a nonprofit. I think I would love to do something like that, Lucy. I need last time I was talking to Lucy, she's like, "You need to get an assistant." And I think she's exactly right. I need to get I've had other people that have worked with me periodically, and the challenge with that is I feel like I need somebody who knows what needs to be done and can direct me. Because what's happened before is the people that I've had help, they've all been phenomenal in their own way, but it's sort of been we've both been new at this, and so we're both kind of fumbling through, and then they're not really sure what needs to get done, and I'm not really sure what needs to get done, and it hasn't ended well. And so I'm at the point now where it's like I feel like I need like a professional, like I need somebody who really knows what they're doing and how to stay organized because it's my email is it's its own horror story in there, and I would love an assistant who, um, could help get me organized and could be like, "Yes, let's do this and this and this, and this can be the plan," and, like, they have it figured out. That's the person I need. I don't know how to find that person, but I need that person. Maria is talking about oh, wait, let me see if I can find that comment. Nikki says, "Yes, this complex post-traumatic stress disorder is crippling. I struggle with it also." Yes. And Maria, some other people had mentioned the Pete Walker book on what is it? From complex I think it's called From Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. Is that seems like a long title. That's not right. What is the title of his book? From Pete Walker. Just look at it's something to do with PTSD, and it is a absolutely fantastic book. It's a book we read maybe it was just me before book club got going. It was one of the earlier books that I read. Speaking of which, Lucy, I don't know if you're in so we still need to come up with, like, the last 5 books for 2018. I was thinking I have these books that from before book club really got going that maybe we could go back and discuss them because I had a lot of books that people tend to ask about, like the Pete Walker book is one of them that I don't think we ever discussed. It was just I read it and took notes and then posted my notes. So Amber says, "Dana, you need a producer." Yes, that would be nice too. Somebody that could go through my videos would be good. Amber asked Dana, "Why does my ex narcissist want to keep kicking me while I'm down when he claims he is happy and moved on?" It's what they do. You know, abusive people, they it's kind of this weird dynamic. And I'm just guessing this is what's going on in their mind. Okay. And I don't even think this is a conscious thing for them. But they don't it starts off with them idealizing their target. This is a normal thing for most relationships. There's this idealized phase. This other person is so fantastic. They're so perfect for me. I wouldn't change anything about them. Nobody is seeing things clearly for at least like the first 90 days in a relationship. Okay? It's you're meeting that person's highest and best self. And that's when a person tends to put in the most amount of effort is right in the beginning. And then over time they get comfortable and then they start being more themselves. So when things start settling in the relationship and then you start realizing, oh, wait a minute, this for them it's like, okay, this person isn't so perfect. In fact, they have different political views from me. They have different, oh, they don't agree with how to raise kids in this, and so these differences start to surface. And so for the abusive person, it's almost like they're like, "Okay, I need you to be a certain way, and then if you're not that way, then I need you to start changing." And so then they start kinda grinding down the edges of that. And oftentimes what they don't like is So they might not like things about us that like we disagree with them about, but they also might be over identifying things that they don't like about themselves in us. So for like school bullies, this is a good example of this, right? So like a school bully might pick on a kid that they view as um, weaker than them in some way. But the reality is, odds are like that kid, that bully kid is probably being bullied at home. And so that stuff is because he can't take it out on his dad at home, right? Or his mom or whoever. He's got to take it out on this other kid in school. And so that's what's happening. And so with the it's like that little bully kid grew up. And then it's the same kind of personality where they have their targets, and so a lot of things about us, like a lot of oftentimes are good character traits because um they narcissists have issues with being vulnerable. Like vulnerability, emotional connection is dangerous for them for whatever reason. And so if we start trying to form a deeper connection, if we're trying to whatever, then instead of that emotional connection getting deeper, it's not. It pushes them even further away. And so and it's like they kinda get on the attack where it's like they have to just completely, so basically what they're doing is they're putting like everything that they don't like about themselves or their life, and they're smearing it onto their target. And then because of that, it's like then they have to destroy the target because they don't like that stuff within themselves. So it's just very like pathological, deeply twisted, crazy behavior. And I think that's part of that sadistic nature of them. Like they enjoy breaking their target, but I don't think it's because they enjoy necessarily even breaking us. It's more of like what we represent. Cause it's, I think in a sick, twisted way, it's them breaking that stuff within themselves that they don't like, if that even makes sense. So, but it's very common. It's very common. The narcissist, somebody was talking about this in the group the other day. They will, come out of the blue and just say like, call, text or call their old target and be like, I'm so happy now. I just want you to know I'm so in love and I'm so happy and I've moved on. And it's just continually trying to grind down their old target. But again, like if you think about it, normal people that are truly happy don't feel the need to go let their ex know how happy they are. Like they just go and be happy, right? So it's just who they are. And that's why too they call us there's targets of narcissists, and that's the thing. Like narcissists aren't like this. Just like school bullies aren't like this to everybody, but they have their targets. It's very isolated stuff, but it speaks to the pathology of their behavior. And normally, the people that, narcissists that they do target are those that are closest to them. Those are the people that they're the most relaxed around. And also, ironically, the ones that represent the biggest vulnerability and the biggest problem. So if they can't be vulnerable, if vulnerability equals danger, or you know, yeah, I guess if vulnerability equals danger, but then these people are closest to them. It's one of the reasons that if they just don't have close relationships to anybody, they don't get close to people. Yeah, truth seeker. That's a good point too. Truth seeker says they lost their innocence a long time ago and they envy it. I think they envy it, and I think there's almost a weird fascination with it. And I think at the same time they tended to be threatened by it, Like if they were abused, I think if they were abused and their innocence, if they linked up that their innocence or like their naivete caused them pain, then they might seek out other people that are naive or innocent and seek to hurt that in them because that was hurt within them. It's just a very interesting, strange, awful Awful dynamic. Yeah, Bonnie says they burn bridges and scorch the earth around them. Yes. Somebody, what Nikki, I think, was talking about the complex post traumatic stress. I also wanted to add that there are videos on YouTube for the tapping therapy, the emotional freedom technique, the EFT tapping therapy that you can go through and work on yourself. So there are some free resources out there. So you might want to Google those. There's also videos for affirmations and things like that that are also on YouTube, that are free and worth checking out. I did a video, what was it, about a week ago or so, for affirmations specifically to help people with complex post traumatic stress. So you can find that on my channel. I did an 8-hour one. So there's only, I don't know, 15 minutes or so of affirmations, and the rest is just relaxing music. So it's just something that you could fall asleep to, or what have you. But there's a lot. Jason Stevenson and Michael Seeley are the two other guys that do affirmations and stuff, and I really enjoy them. Michael Seeley, I believe, is a hypnotherapist, and boy, does he have the voice, the voice for it. So his videos are different from Jason's in that Michael's are more hypnotherapy, whereas Jason's are more very just like relaxation and guided imagery. But something else to check out. Uh, let's see. Let me scroll down here. Standing Firm says, "My heart actually aches because there's so much pain in this world." I hear you. I hear you. When 9/11 happened, I was physically and so I get teary even thinking about it. I was in so much pain, and I like, oh, it was just awful. Like, I my you of course, and there were so many details that were coming out about it. It was, and I probably, a lot of people felt like this, but your heart, it just felt like your heart was being ripped out. It was just absolutely awful that just the suffering, the level of suffering that people were going through was just beyond anything that you would think that that people should ever have to go through. I think one of the things for me with that, when there are these intensely emotional times where the suffering is so great, is one of the things that I do to help kind of reclaim um my power and control over that, is to really get busy on counteracting that with good. So whatever that might be, dropping a bag of clothes off to Goodwill, or um, even just smiling to a stranger, or holding a door open, or um, volunteering, or you name it, just spreading some goodness in the world. Like, we can't change everything, but like there are certain things that we can do, and those things do matter. Like, it really does matter. Oh, wow. James says, wow, 9/11 is my birthday. It was my 18th birthday. Wow. When 9/11 hit, I was in college, and I had an 8 a.m. I will never forget. I'm probably like everybody else, right? Like, you don't forget that morning. I had an 8 a.m. poetry class, and the professor was new. She had actually just moved from New York. And so the first plane had hit. I was listening to NPR that morning getting ready for class. The first plane had hit, and the reports are coming out, and it seemed like it was more of like an accident, and we all thought it was like a small, or at least the reports on NPR was like that it seemed like it was a small plane, not like a big passenger plane. And anyways, so I get to campus, and everybody's like walking around just stunned. And we get in there, and I think there were like 6 of us that showed up for class that morning. And our instructor, you could tell obviously she had been crying, and she said, people were like, is class canceled? Like there was a second plane that hit, like what, and everybody had this feeling of panic, right? Like that we were all in danger, even though at the time I was living in Colorado. And it was just this panic of like, I just want to go home. I just want to be around safe people. I don't want to be out in like an open place. And she had said, no, we're going to finish class because basically because the terrorists want to terrorize us, and we're not going to give them that. And she's like, I'm a New Yorker and I'm not going to give them that. And so we stayed and we finished class. And that her action of that, like that strength that she showed, and she's like, no, we're not giving them that, you know? Uh, that will always stick with me. That was so powerful and just spoke volumes. So, okay. How about on that note, it is time. We are at the time flies. We are at the 3-hour mark. So let's take some time. Let's get grounded and do our own guided imagery of things, and get in the moment here. So please, if you can, get comfortable in wherever you are. If you're laying down or if you're sitting, get comfortable in your space. Let's take a few deep breaths in through your nose, and exhaling out through your mouth. Let's do 3 more of those breaths. With each inhale in through your nose, sending that breath deeper and deeper down to the bottom of your lungs, letting each of your lungs fill up completely. And exhale. With each exhale, exhaling all of the stress, the worry, the tension that you're holding on to. Now bringing your awareness to the top of your head, and visualize yourself kind of doing a kind of like an energetic body scan. Scanning for any tension, worry, pain, tense muscles. relaxing them along the way. So bringing that relaxation down from the top of your head, down to your eyes, letting your eyes and your forehead relax. Noticing if you find yourself kind of pinching your eyes closed or squinting, holding tension, relaxing your eyes, relaxing your cheeks, relaxing your jaw, letting your jaw kind of hang open, letting the tension go, letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth, bringing your attention down to your neck and your shoulders. And if you're sitting, letting it drop, letting your shoulders drop. Visualize them going down a couple of inches, dropping with the weight of relaxation. Bringing your attention to your chest, letting your chest muscles relax and open, knowing that at this moment in time that you are safe, you are here, everything is okay. This very moment, we're here, you're relaxing. It's okay for you to relax right now. If you're struggling with relaxing right now, you might want to take a moment and visualize all of your worry and your stress and your tension as a ball, maybe like the size of a softball. Maybe it weighs 5 pounds, maybe it weighs 25 pounds. Visualize taking that ball and placing it down beside you, knowing that all of those problems, all that stress and worry, that you can pick it up at any time that you would like. But for right now, it's okay to set that down and to be here in the moment, and it's okay to relax. So, bringing your attention back to your chest, letting your chest relax and fall open, continuing to breathe, bringing in that oxygen, filling your lungs, filling all the way to the bottom of your lungs, maybe down into your stomach. Relaxing your stomach, your diaphragm. Bringing your attention down into your hips, your lower back, your pelvis. Releasing any tense muscles that you might have in this area, and kind of letting your legs just fall in whatever position is comfortable for you. Letting your body sink down deep into your chair or your bed. Bringing your attention down into your thighs, into your knees, your calves, your ankles, and your feet. Letting your feet fall in any direction that's comfortable for you. Feeling that feeling of complete relaxation. Knowing in this moment that everything is good, that you are here, that you are safe. being as fully present as you possibly can be in this moment. Let's take in 5 deep breaths to just appreciate this moment for what it is. So, breathing in nice, healing, calming energy, and continuing to exhale any remaining tension or anxiety. Now, visualize a healing, kind of maybe flickering white light in the center of your chest. This is a healing light. It's always within you. It's everything. It connects you to everything good and right in the world. It's always within you, and it's always burning. This light is calming, it's comforting. It's a reminder of your true, your highest and your best self. And it connects you to everything good and right in the world. And with each breath, visualize that light getting bigger and brighter. As it expands, filling up your chest, your head, your arms, your back, down into your stomach, your lower back, your legs, all the way down to your feet. Till you can feel that energy throughout every single space in your body. Feeling it as it swirls and makes its way, touching every single cell in your body, healing every single cell in your body. Knowing that in this moment and in every moment, in both small and big ways, every single day that you are healing. You may not feel it, but you truly are healing. Every single day, every single way, small and big ways, all the time. And now let's take a moment to send that light out to other people, just letting them know that we appreciate them, that we're thinking about them. Or if you can think of anybody that you know that might just need kind of that energetic hug, let's go ahead and we'll do 7 breaths. take that time to visualize anybody that you want to send some good energy out to. And when you're ready, come on back. Make sure to give yourself a big energetic hug, because you are as deserving of your compassion and your love as anybody else. You matter. There is so much that is right with you. And you have done such an amazing job and you have come so far. You can do this. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and rejoin the group. So, thank you guys so much for joining me and joining us and being here and participating and everything else. And I will see you guys next Wednesday, and hopefully we will have some uh, clarity about this new group that we're going to be starting. So I will have answers for you next week. So you guys take care. As always, lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and have a fantastic week. Goodbye.